in the building as you could. The first week, that siren went off 3 times. Never went off again. They obviously figured we were losing too much time. So, but here we knew enough to protect ourselves from radiation. I'm talking longer than anticipated, so I'll wrap it up. I learned in my job as aide to Colonel Ruhoff that the bomb was to be used the first week in August. And I couldn't resist telling Pat the approximate date the war would end. I think I was accurate within a few days. The August the 6th, 1945, little boy was dropped on Hiroshima, and it was detonated. It detonated as hoped. I must say Colonel Ruhoff was very, very concerned because there was no guarantee. This bomb had never been tested. The critical mass had never been accurately determined. The method of ignition was completely different than the device that had been tested successfully with plutonium. And Ruhoff had spent an enormous budget and gone all out, and there was a real possibility that the Hiroshima bomb would have been a dud. In that case, of course, the Nagasaki bomb, Fat Man, which we knew worked, would be dropped on Hiroshima. Otherwise, the Japanese would have been made a present of a not quite critical mass of uranium-235. The Japanese, incidentally, also had an atomic bomb project. Fortunately, they didn't get very far with theirs. At war's end, I think I have at war's end, this was taken at Oak Ridge after the news arrived. And incidentally, the local radio station, Knoxville radio station, mentioned in their news broadcast that a new type of bomb had been dropped on Hiroshima, an automatic bomb. The announcer apparently thought atomic was a misprint, and he corrected it to an automatic bomb. But for the first time, most of the workers knew what they had been working on. They were also free at war's end to leave, and many of them did. Pat couldn't wait to get back to her beloved Manhattan, and she left as soon as possible. I had to wrap up some loose ends, and so I couldn't leave for a few more weeks. The good Colonel Ruhoff was very, very relieved, to put it mildly, and some of his relief rubbed off on me. So that he asked me, when I did finally leave, to go back to Columbia to finish up my work. How are you planning to go to New York? I said, I'll take the train. He said, no, you won't. He arranged for me to fly on a military aircraft to New York. And then years later, I apparently had gotten on some kind of lay list because I got an invitation from the Vice President, Al Gore, to attend the 50th anniversary of VJ Day. And President Clinton was in Hawaii celebrating, which is why it was Gore. And Pat and I sat in the bleachers next to the diplomatic corps out of Washington. And who did we sit near? The Japanese delegation. And they sat, of course, stony-faced while we were marching up and down the field and flying overhead. It was interesting to see. And then more recently, we were invited to the dedication of the site for the World War II Memorial. This with President Clinton invitation, and Pat wound up able to shake his hand. Have you washed your hands since? Well, I've talked longer than I should have. Any questions before we get to the refreshments? Thank you. Yes. Would you speak very loudly so?
Gilbert, am I correct in assuming that there was a slight disagreement among the scientists after you developed this explosive weapon about dropping it?
Yeah. Many of the scientists were given to believe, and I think deliberately, that the bomb would be demonstrated to the Japanese on a deserted island, and the Japanese would be given a chance to surrender. However, we had two bombs, and two bombs only. One bomb untested and uncertain to work. If we had used the one bomb we knew would work to demonstrate to the Japanese, and they had not surrendered. They didn't surrender after the first bomb, you recall. That would not have been too good. Most scientists did not know this. Very few people knew the amount of material that was being produced and the number of bombs that we had. That was one of the best kept secrets. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
Besides Oak Ridge, were there any other places where they produced separated U-235 and U-238?
Not U-235. At Oak Ridge, they produced the U-235. And Hanford, Washington, they produced the plutonium. Why Oak Ridge? Because it was near the Tennessee Valley Authority. They needed enormous amounts of electric power. Why Hanford, Washington? Was on the banks of the Columbia River, and they needed large amounts of water to cool the nuclear piles. And then, of course, Los Alamos, which is the most publicized site, where they assembled the final bomb from the active material produced either at Oak Ridge or at Hanford. And Los Alamos was selected because it was isolated. If they had made a mistake and the bomb had detonated, they didn't want it to happen near any populated center. Yes?
Before Einstein was frozen out of the Manhattan Project, he developed a gaseous diffusion process for separating U-235 and U-238. Was that the same thing that you worked on?
No, the gaseous diffusion, the question was Einstein frozen out of the uranium-235 separation process, and did he have anything to do with the gaseous diffusion? The answer to both parts is no, he wasn't frozen out. Einstein provided the theoretical basis. The reason the enormous amount of energy was generated was some mass had disappeared and been converted to energy by the Einstein relationship. But he never did work on the project itself. He was a pacifist, and you're right, the Army intelligence probably wouldn't have cleared him. But the gaseous diffusion method was developed at Columbia University, my alma mater, where they passed uranium hexafluoride through row after row after row of porous nickel metal, and very slight enrichment after each step. It took at least an 80% enrichment for the material to be fissionable. They never got anywhere near that with the gaseous diffusion process. And that was done at Oak Ridge, K25. So those are the three sites: Oak Ridge for uranium, Hanford, Washington for plutonium, and Los Alamos for assembling the bomb. Any other questions? Thank you very, very much. Let's enjoy the refreshments.
I'd like to thank you for a really fascinating talk. Don't hear me, yeah? It's okay, I just wanted to thank you for a really fascinating talk and some things that I never knew before. Is there no other question? We'll adjourn. have some cookies and coffee. And the next meeting of our board will be on Thursday, July 26th.